All right. Calling to order the Town Bylaw and Charter Review Committee for February 21st. We have nearly everybody in the room, and we are expecting Louise Miller remotely, but she hasn't quite joined us yet. So we are calling the meeting to order. And when Louise joins us, we'll be sure to check that she can hear us and we can hear her. So Kate will let us know when we see her arrive. All right. At our last meeting, I think we had a good productive discussion that really focused on the bylaws. And I think our focus right now is on the possibility of bringing a potential periodic review of the bylaw to town meeting in the spring. So based on the discussion that we had, Kate had drafted something that we think incorporates all the various points that people and concerns that people had, so that we could try to be clear what our intent was and what the purpose of this group would be and how it would be structured. So I think the question for people in the room is there something that you see that you think doesn't align with what we talked about last time, or that you think we have forgotten in this?
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead, Al.
So I wouldn't say necessarily forgotten. I had two comments. I think my biggest question still is the question that came up last time about this being a workaround from the normal process of committees and bylaw, perhaps, you or changes, et cetera. Because when we had talked at the last meeting, you had said, really, we view this as administrative, right? I don't see any limit in scope of work in this bylaw to make sure that it doesn't end up being that sort of workaround or special interest. So I didn't know what you thought.
I have thought, hang on, maybe what's it?
There is.
I thought it was
there,
Meaning if,
you know,
there was something, like we talked last time, that if in any of the other committees or boards, bylaw changes usually come from goals or things that out there, but if perhaps there were, I mean, I hate to always think worst case scenario, but those were some of the questions that came up last time about whether it's special interest or perhaps
that's what I'm.
something outside of the goals that public is bringing forth. It doesn't say anywhere in here that any modifications are originated either within committees perhaps, or tied to their goals, or restricted somehow that can anybody just bring something forward?
That last part of your comment is interesting to me. I do recall that being a bit of a robust discussion, and that I don't know that it was resolved in a legal sense to impose a limitation on this committee, but that there are other committees where anyone from the public can participate in the process to initiate some kind of a change. But in the absence of that, this committee is struck up with the sole purpose. And is it possible that someone, an interest group may have an interest in looking to make a bylaw change of some significance? They could, they could write to the town manager or town council or the select board. And it would ultimately be up to the 7 members of the board to determine whether or not it was warranted to give further consideration, given the fact that we'd have someone from FinCom, we'd have the town clerk, we'd have someone from the town manager's office, in addition to planning, FinCom, school committee, and the select board, of course, with town council. And that all of those people in particular would be able to exercise enough judgment on behalf of the town to resolve whether or not if there was merit in advancing a bylaw change that might come from a particularly interested party or group. So that's why I didn't see that there was a need to limit.
So I think your comment is well taken, right? I'm not sure, I'm sitting here rereading this going, it's definitely not in here, trying to think about how it goes in here. I'm not sure that it belongs here. So here's my thing. Fundamentally, I think minimal amounts of committee info belongs in bylaws. So this is actually a philosophical question, right? Based on my advice. At some point in my career, that's the advice that we've been given. So, and the robust section is a charter for a committee, which in fact has greater flexibility in it. So I'm wondering if we should draft, in fact, a charter, like one of the charge documents that we have for a committee. And in that charge document, we can be much more explicit about the purpose not being to take over regular business of committees. Rather, it's to do this holistic review and identify what work needs to happen from that review. Instead of somebody using it as an end run, that there's language we could create there that could be more expansive than I think we would want to put here and have locked in the bylaw, if that makes sense to people.
Yeah, I mean, I think I just wanted to make sure that we were clear on what our expectation as a committee here is when writing this, you know, in light of what we were talking about last time, where just to put those, I don't know, guidelines, the charge, however it is that, you know, you give committee work their work. I just don't think that was captured here.
I mean, I think Louise is trying, her Zoom is rebooting, like it always happens.
Oh dear,
She's coming, so, yeah.
Chris,
And just one comment that I'd offer is I think the way this draft, one of the ways this draft attempts to sort of address this issue is in the first section by saying that the work of this committee is going to have a particular emphasis on ensuring the bylaws are current, clear, and well organized, which I think was meant as a distinction from, you know, getting into the substantive areas of within the jurisdiction of other boards and committees in town. It doesn't, as currently drafted, it doesn't prohibit doing that exactly, but it was meant to, without being overly limiting, sort of steer this committee in the direction of doing more organizational and housekeeping type stuff to the bylaws generally. I think it can certainly be an open question of whether we should do that's enough or whether we should be more clear about that. But that's sort of the way this draft was attempting to tackle that issue.
I mean, Marion, I mean, we can almost add your sentence. I don't think that's too much for the bylaw, that it's not intended to take over, you know, a board or committee that regularly reviews their.
and has substantive changes to make in their
On their own.
purview.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay, if we could do that, I think
think-
that would be helpful.
I do, I also think this is something that could come up at town meeting too,
Yeah.
some of these questions, so the more that we clear.
Clear.
I wrote down what you heard and I wrote
Agreed.
down what I heard.
Yeah.
So I do think that the question was one that we were in agreement with all of us last time. So the question is how we can make that as clear as possible.
Yeah.
And then every committee or board does have to supplement sometimes on what's asked of them, what's appropriate for them to be doing, but maybe it's something more clear in there. As long as it's not too limiting. Yeah, we don't agree, we don't want to be a.
Uber committee, that's
Yeah.
not it. It is not the Uber committee. Yeah.
Right.
And understanding within every 10-year thing, like certainly think it's not like the fat du jour per se, but you know,
Right.
to clarify, I think makes me feel more comfortable.
I'm thinking one potential piece of language that, and I don't know if it goes in a bylaw or if it goes in a charter or where, but it could be something like for the purpose of holistic review. You know, which gives it the sense that we want to look at all of it, how it goes together, et cetera. It's really, yeah, not an alternative vehicle for just whatever policy concerns people have. It's that this otherwise doesn't get looked at holistically. That's the missing piece, right? We already have, as you said, all the different ways to make substantive change. The thing that we don't have is the regular holistic review.
Right. So people go in looking at one-offs all the time that relate to their areas. But yeah. Okay. Kate, do you think we should craft a sentence here? I don't really like word drafting by committee.
Can you just give me a second?
Okay.
It's telling me
Yeah,
that
we can.
my other meeting is still on, although it's not.
When we get there, I have a couple of really substantive.
why don't we carry on?
Yes, go ahead.
If we can.
Yeah, if you wordsmith, I'll just go
Yeah.
make sure the other one is off.
So these are non-substantive, I don't think, but a little bit more clear that if you want to deal with this, or if you want to continue dealing with
No,
the other.
we'll
one.
take non-substantive right now.
So in the first paragraph, 1.16.1, where it says that the committee would make a report to town meeting general bylaws and make a report with recommendations. I would suggest including with any recommendations, because it could very well be that there are no recommendations to make at a particular instance. In other words, we'll strike up the committee, and like we talked about, there may not be anything to necessarily do. It's the work of the committee to determine that, and then equally at the end of 1.16.7, after the conclusion of the town meeting, at which it presents, instead of its, it would be any recommendations. So that mirrors.
Okay, yeah.
And then my last comment was, I don't know that I've seen something referred to as a work plan before in a bylaw, and I wasn't sure if we would actually strike that. 1.16.3. I'm not sure that it,
Agenda?
no, the committee shall
Yeah, I
set
know,
it.
but
on
could it be
oh.
changed to agenda?
Oh. I would hold that out as self-evident, given that it's its own creation and it has its own authority. And it would have its own, we don't really know technically what, and I know we spoke about it colloquially, what the work plan is, but I don't know that we necessarily have to set it out in a bylaw for this. I think that would actually come about in the charge document, which is almost more of a regulatory thing than a bylaw thing.
I mean, it almost touches on what Allison was started out with, is that this committee's in charge of dealing with what it deals with, as opposed to having it considering side run anywhere, but.
I guess though, to play devil's advocate, and I'm not sure how this was drafted, does this mean that nobody else is gonna tell it what to do?
I feel like that's what.
Right, so like the
And that's
select
what we
board
want
cannot
that.
tell this committee
Yes.
what to do.
Yeah.
This committee decides what to do. So maybe that it is not unnecessary. Maybe there's a point.
I feel like
Having
having a
it.
point, maybe use a different, if you want to use a different word, but. I think it does go to what Allison was talking about and what we need to be clear about. But there needs to be something said about committees responsible for setting this.
I mean, do we do that elsewhere in the bylaw when we're talking about the formation of other committees? Like, it's assumed that the school committee is dealing with the work of schools and finance, although.
Where
finance
we have our
depends.
specific job by legally. By
Right.
state
Yours
law,
is by
we have our
statute,
jobs.
yeah.
Oh, right, that's right.
So it's not in here.
That's where I think and I don't think bylaw, but maybe a bylaws apply to the school committee, but I don't think there's an overall bylaw that sets our
Right,
plan.
right.
Mhm.
The planning board is statutory, but also there are some other.
The use of work plan here, which also struck me as possibly connoting the fact that as soon as this committee is constituted, it's going to have a target deadline on the books, like, which is either the next town meeting or 2 town meetings away.
Right.
This suggests that it's, both nobody else is going to tell it what to do, but also that it's going to have to figure out pretty quickly how it gets from constitution to, being ready to present recommendations to town meeting, 30 days or 60 days before that actual town meeting actually happens.
So,
Or actually before the warrant goes final, I would think.
Right.
so how would that not otherwise be served by by 0.1 and 0.2? Isn't that already the case, in other words?
Probably. I mean, it strikes me as language that doesn't hurt. But
I see.
if we think work plan needs more clarification, we can certainly do that.
I mean, it does give pause to someone looking at this. Thinks that someone else should be doing the committee what to do. It may not be necessary, but it might be appropriate.
Well, that's one of the notes I wrote down too, was something that we had talked about, I think, that the committee could consider recommendations from other boards and committees. I mean, so if we're talking about work plan, scope of work, whether it's again, their charge or in here. You know, that was something that we talked about. Right, because I feel like, I mean, I don't sit in on all of your meetings, but I would think that during your regular course of business and your goals, you don't always get to look at your bylaws holistically.
Right.
So therefore, if something has come up, it perhaps can be kicked that way. Did you see that as part of the purpose too?
I see part of the purpose, it could be that something comes up here that goes back to that group, right? That goes back to that committee,
Okay,
not that the Uber committee takes it up on their behalf. Right?
so the bylaw committee. So it's not like, I mean, I know you're statutory different, where your bylaws come, but the other committee,
Right.
if they had something like when we need to renumber or something administrative.
Right,
So you're saying it originates in the bylaw committee, not ever in another committee, bringing it to this one.
No, I do think another committee could flag.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
For this committee, that there's something, and I do expect that there would be a start of a process where you might hold a public hearing to see what input people have, again, with the understanding that you're not taking on other people's work, but is there something else that somebody else brings to you in the process? I think that's a legitimate thing to do.
which is a distinction from your point about like a rogue interest or an interested party.
Right. Okay, so if we were to look at, crafting some kind of a sentence and where that should go. I'm,
So at the end of that, point one. This committee shall work under its own, has the authority to devise its own agenda and, charge, is that what you call it, Kate?
well, so
Exercise in our charge, right? Isn't that originating from here?
yeah.
Yeah.
So I'm actually looking at 116.3,
Mhm.
right, which talks about setting the work plan. All right, so I don't know whether it's useful or not to say work plan for holistic review, which to reinforce kind of that point. All right, but I'm wondering if that might also be the place to say, a purview of the committee shall not. I don't know if I like shall nots here, but, shall not incorporate. Yeah,
one suggestion might be to include a new section
yeah,
to the draft. May either after between 3 and 4 or somewhere else. But I think I would suggest it maybe might work as follows. If we could say in section 116.1 that the committee is going to make recommendations to town meeting concerning any proposed amendments may determine to be necessary or desirable, consistent with section 1.16.3 or 4 below,
Yeah.
period. Then we break out the last sort of remnant of 116.1, which is about the particular emphasis on ensuring that the bylaws remain current, clear, and well organized, and sort of supplement that with the language you talked about earlier, which is that the committee is not going to get into the substantive areas of other boards and committees or serve as an alternate vehicle for policy concerns within the jurisdiction of another board. I can try to make that
Yeah.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Although a second ago, we did just say that another committee might make
yeah,
some suggestions.
but I don't know that constitute as substantive to their work, right? So that's a distinction, I think.
Yeah, because they can propose a bylaw anyway, anytime, right, if they need a bylaw, but if they are looking at I don't know, like Board of Health, that there's like a whole section of bylaws, right? They're looking at their whole section and they're like, wow, there's old stuff in here that we need to get rid of or whatever, you know what I mean? That they don't want to deal with themselves, you know, because
Right.
it's more of a drafting thing.
So they might ask for help as well.
Right,
And I
Right.
mean, if you look at section, the 4.5 section, it would establish a subcommittee anyway.
Correct.
With
Yeah.
specific
Correct.
interest in the subject
To
matter.
bring back the
Yeah.
recommendation for that.
yeah.
So have you guys already talked, sorry, I don't know if I have a camera or what's going on, but, and don't know if guys can see me, but have you already talked about 116.5?
We haven't talked specifically about 116.5. What are you thinking about 116.5?
So I am not really in favor of this committee being able to set up a different different committee from this committee to do the work. I think that if there are others that are interested, they can attend meetings and participate in discussions, and that can be over extended periods of time. But I am not clear on how it would work if this committee were to set up another subcommittee, since it was very important at our last meeting that there be certain representation on this committee. So for instance, if we're talking about, something with respect to Board of Health bylaw, and the Board of Health is interested in having a change to the bylaw, I don't think, in my view, that the way to handle that would be to set up a subcommittee where you have now more members of the Board of Health and maybe only some of the members of this committee. They come back with something to this committee, and that will be, in my view, a de facto creation of a committee that's different from this committee to actually do the work. And we can talk about it some more. It's weird talking to a black screen, but
I'm sorry, Louise.
no, it's good. It's all good. This is my
It's just
personal,
my day.
yeah, this is my personal computer. Has everybody told you I'm technologically challenged?
Says you can add it, but I don't know.
So, so I guess I was thinking that something would come up where this group has read through the whole bylaw, and in doing that bylaw, they identify an area where, let's stick with Board of Health, right, has been working on several things over the last 10 years. And once you read through the whole section, you realize it's either out of order, things are not quite connected the way that you planned, something got misnumbered along the way. All those things can happen just in the course of business. And it results in a need to say, can there be a small group that can read through the section with subject matter expertise and bring back just a recommendation for how it needs to be adjusted? Again, I'm not viewing it as a policy-making body. It's more, something got out of whack here. You come tell us how we get it back in sync.
Well, Louise, were you thinking that would be done by this committee, basically, the one we're talking about, as opposed to having ancillary help?
Yes, because again, my concern is that is with setting up a committee different from this committee to do the work of this committee. And now we've changed basically the balance of the committee. It's all purely about process. It's not whether, certain things might be a good idea, or, certain areas may or may not be within a certain subject matter expertise area. I mean, we could say something as well about the budget, and like, who would decide what would be a subject matter subcommittee for the budget? Oh, maybe.
Just to put a bit of a different lens on this. One example of things that come up that don't materially adversely affect the bylaw, but administratively It does. With the zoning bylaw, after I think we were dealing with the zoning bylaw change for the ADUs. There was an inconsistency in the zoning bylaw. You know, the zoning bylaw is different than this bylaw, but just by way of an administrative example, the numbering was actually mechanically incorrect. And it wasn't caught beforehand.
Mhm.
But that would be an example, if that were to happen, if there was some change that this board made with regard to the bylaw for governing the Board of Health, go back to the Board of Health, where there was some mechanical inconsistency. Sometimes it is helpful, Louise, to have, in addition to this committee, members from the Board of Health who could advise on the reorganization of the bylaw that this committee is ultimately going to recommend to town meeting to make sure that that the bylaw committee, which doesn't have the domain expertise of the procedure and process of this other committee here, the Department of Health, the Board of Health, to have their insight might inform in a positive and constructive way the creation of that bylaw change so that it's mechanically operating in the way that it should. And I read 1.16.5 not in a way to not shelve or transfer the power of this committee to another committee to obfuscate from this committee's work, but to bring in domain expertise rather to help inform that the bylaw is crafted in a mechanically or in an operative way. I read it a little differently than you did.
So, but I'm sorry.
I was just gonna say, go ahead. Go ahead,
I
Louise.
can't see the entire room, just so you know.
Okay, okay.
And you still can't see me. I have no idea why.
Okay, go ahead, Louise.
No, I was just gonna say, so, I mean, 1.16.6 seems to make mandatory that the committee will consult with town staff and other boards, committees that have jurisdiction over a particular bylaw under review. And it does seem to me that if you have a committee or a board that has an issue with their bylaw and they want to bring it to the attention of this committee, there's no reason to create another committee. Like, that committee already has the expertise. So I was just trying to understand, like, when would you create another committee then, a subcommittee? Who would they be made up of? And so that was my only concern. And I
That is another
interrupted someone, but I don't know whom.
Allison.
It was me, but I actually was gonna say the same thing, that I feel like 1.16.6 serves that need that you were describing. Instead of a subcommittee, it's bringing in the expert.
So the committee would do the work with the experts coming in as
Right.
opposed to setting up a committee, subcommittee.
I think that works, and I think that's consistent also with what we talked about, so.
Would,
And the-
if 16.4 were there, if the committee felt it was necessary to set up a subcommittee, do they have an option?
Yeah,
I think a committee has inherent power to set up a subcommittee if it wants to. And for purposes of the open meeting law, that would happen if you know, Adam and Allison were directed by the broader committee to go out and talk to the Board of Health. You'd be in a subcommittee for purposes of the open meeting law.
Yeah, okay.
so are we losing 16.4 and 16.5?
I would think we keep 16.4 and we lose 16.5.
Point
Yeah,
four
That
is
makes
just,
sense.
Yeah,
16.4 is just a lot, yeah.
Yeah,
Okay,
Wait, keeping 0.4?
keep 4, take up
Keep
5.
4, take out 5.
Yeah.
Chris, I don't know what language you had before.
Have you crafted it while we were
I've-
trying to get Louise back? and
I have
forth?
something to air, so let's see what we think.
In 1.16.1 or?
So in 1.16.1 would be revised so that the end of that paragraph reads, to town meeting concerning any proposed amendments that the committee may determine to be necessary or desirable, consistent with section 1.16.4 below, period. So we now have a new 0.4. Then that section,
We'd have a new 0.5 probably.
yes,
right? Okay,
Yeah.
that
thank you.
section in my current draft would read, the committee shall conduct a holistic review of the bylaws with a particular emphasis on ensuring that the bylaws remain current, clear, and well organized, without serving as a forum for advancing policy within the jurisdiction of another town board, committee, or commission, period.
I think that works.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Louise, do you want to hear that again?
Nope, that sounds good.
There you go.
Nice, very
All right.
crisp.
Yay.
Thank you.
Took a long time.
Any
to
other,
say
any other
that.
comments?
I have another question about,
Okay.
the composition of the committee in the second section, when
Yep.
it says designee. Is it envisioned that it is somebody on the actual board who has that knowledge and brain power from being on the committee, or just a designee that they're pointing that might not be currently sitting on the board?
So this was me.
Okay.
The issue that I see is that our board members are just so overcommitted that generally I would expect they would be appointing a former member. Somebody who, like, that's what we've seen, in some instances, but if you have every member of the planning board serving on something else, they don't have it. I mean, we could say former member, we did want to, it does say that they have experience in town government and town meeting. But that's the downside, if the board appointed somebody who,
And the board could appoint a sitting member, right? So
Yeah.
I mean, I think it is completely consistent. And it could be that the first time we go through this, that
They
we
probably
do
will.
that probably would happen anyway, but,
I mean, just sitting around this table, I mean, I happen to like the composition where it's from boards with board experience. I know I'm a little bit different than that, but from town meeting, I have that I
Yeah.
bring to the table. So I appreciated that where it was a member of the committee. So I just wondered,
I mean, this is a big deal, so if we want to take out designee, that's the only reason I put it in there was that get people.
Yeah, I could see,
The only one I
Say-
could see having a designee is a town moderator. Myself.
Right, because it's one person.
I could see a committee or board turning over many members in a short period of time, and perhaps they want to use someone past member who's got considerable time and experience. But it would seem like generally we'd like to go for a member of the, perhaps we don't want to completely limit ourselves to that. I mean, just take school committee, there were two people very interested in doing this committee. The others don't have the history and didn't have the interest.
I think that history, historical perspective is very valuable. That's why.
so
So,
I think keeping the or designee language is useful. I don't know if it makes sense. We said have experience in town government. Maybe we want to be more specific. Members should have experience in town government, have been a prior member of a governing body and town meeting or something like that. You know, that those might be characteristics of the person.
You could limit it to designee who's been a member of that board. You could
or
end up with,
designee who is a town meeting member or has been a town meeting member.
Right, and we have some open spots for town meeting members already. I mean, I would think from the particular board's perspective that it would be more effective certainly to have somebody who had been a prior sitting member of that board. And that was what we were thinking, but.
So it could say one member or designee of the select board.
can you put the qualifier at the end?
Yes, I was just moving that. Okay, so at the very end, we delete the period, add a semicolon and say, provided that any,
Except in the case of moderator.
Yeah,
Provided that except in the case of moderator, that any designee shall be a prior member of the applicable board or committee.
Current or prior member.
What
In
did we just
addition
say?
to.
Current or prior.
It already says current, so yeah, so the
Yeah.
designee would have
Okay.
to be, yeah.
Yeah, I think that ensures that historical.
Right,
not
perspective.
Institutional.
I mean, you could have a board that turns over so fast, a prior member would have a lot more experience.
Right.
Absolutely.
Certainly true of a lot of the select board.
Yeah, and, yeah,
I like that.
okay. Other thoughts?
And what are we envisioning for appointment of the town meeting member? Is that, like, does there have to be some kind of an application process? Like, how is a town meeting member being selected? What if there are 3 town meeting members interested in being on this committee?
So it says now that they would be appointed by the remaining 6, so
Right.
presumably you would,
Interview and appoint. That's what I was thinking to do.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does,
Yeah,
does the committee itself, is it active as the 6 members when it's hasn't been appointed yet, the 7?
As long as it's a
Correct.
quorum.
Right. So the 6 members are assigned first. Meeting 1, they resolve who from town meeting
Is the appointee,
is the 7th.
yeah.
Got it.
I mean, that the process of doing the interviewing and joint appointments is something that we do routinely for some other boards. So I mean, it just seemed like a logical way. When Kate and I talked about it for
I
doing.
mean, I would imagine we would advertise or probably direct mail.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
to
To
town meeting
town meeting
members.
members.
Direct to
Yes.
town meeting members, yeah.
Yeah.
To let them know that that
Mhm.
opportunity exists. Exactly.
okay. So can we talk about timeline for the work of the committee?
Yes, are you thinking we need to put something in about timeline here?
I do. I think that we probably should indicate when the committee starts and that it has a certain period of time to complete the work. We don't want a committee that sits for 7 years. Bring to bring something forward. Not that I wouldn't love to sit on a committee for 7 years on a single issue, but
Yeah, right.
So should they convene within 30 days of the town meeting when they're created? Or the adoption of, oh wait, no, let's see, it's gonna be a year with a 5,
It's gonna be a
so
year with a 5.
by the end of the
yeah, so if it's a year with,
month with the year,
By February 1st of the
next year that ends,
year 2025.
So
Well-
is the 5 the year that it is brought to town meeting, the whatever recommendations, or is the 5 the year that the work starts?
they start.
it starts.
So if this is passed in May, the committee would start in, I would say, in January of a year ending in 5.
I agree, yeah.
And
And
then
then-
would bring its conclusion to the October town meeting?
I think you need to give them, everything takes 18 months.
So the following May.
So the
I'd say
following
the
May.
earliest, the May of the,
So you start in
2026.
January 2025
yeah.
and you present in May 2026.
So
Yeah, if they're
you
already-
could
Is that the
say,
idea?
Right.
that we're-
you could say not longer than,
Yeah,
you know, whatever that.
or you could say that the, however you would say it, or sooner, like that's usually
Or
how we
sooner,
say it.
yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So- How do you say that?
The October special town meeting of the year following the
Yeah.
committee's constitution.
The year end.
No, I think we said
No,
the
the
May.
annual,
Okay.
the annual of the
Yeah.
year following.
The annual of the year
Constitution,
following or sooner. Nicely
Yeah.
done, there's a lot of wordsmithing going on.
So the toughest one of these is gonna be the first committee. Just figuring out how it works.
They'll probably have the most work too, because there's some bugs in there.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
Would a good place for this be in 116.3 so that it says the committee shall set its own
Yeah,
work
yeah,
plan.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And shall present its recommendations to the annual town meeting occurring in the spring
Yeah,
of
After,
the
do
year after the committee is constituted.
you have somewhere that they're gonna start in January?
That's where I think
I need to add that too.
Yeah,
the work plan.
it could go in that
documents
sentence.
The January of,
the year
The
ending.
year ending in 5.
exactly. And continuing through
Clock is ticking.
the following annual town meeting or sooner.
Or sooner. The annual town meeting of the year following or sooner, I think is what you
We
said.
just specify year following, because
Right,
4 months is not gonna.
Yeah.
right.
Unless we collectively, whoever it is, meets every week. Might do. Almost. Least drama I've seen in the meeting in a long time. Well, they've had more drama than usual.
Yes.
You want drama, you can cut it off.
We're recording. Will be no drama.
Okay,
So,
What do you got?
116.3. The committee shall set its own work plan, comma, which shall commence in January of each year ending in a 5, and shall provide for the committee to make any recommendations to the annual town meeting in the spring of the following year.
Or sooner.
Or
Or sooner.
yeah. Okay. Louise, do you think we're good?
I do, yeah.
So we have a placeholder for this in the special. Could put it back in the annual, because you're redoing you have 2 more occasions to
Touch the annual.
touch the annual. Seems like a better place for in the annual.
It does seem like a
Okay,
better
I
place
can
to
put it
have it
back
in the
in.
annual.
So,
Yeah.
but can we get a final draft and then have a very short meeting where we all, or, yeah, I don't think we can do this by email. We would have to have a short meeting where we all agree that this is it. Because we don't have any written
Yeah.
words right now.
Do we have time to do that after I get back? When do we?
So
have to-
I'll put the version that think we've agreed to, but
In
the
the current
final vote
draft.
on the warrant before it goes to the print is March 12th.
Okay,
So maybe we could meet,
the 11th. We
Or
do
the
that, or
12th.
is that, or the
well, we
12th?
have town seal it.
What kind of day of the week is it on the 12th?
Monday,
12th is
Tuesday.
select board.
It'll be this.
A
Monday or
Tuesday.
Tuesday.
School, not school committee Tuesdays.
Can I? Have you remote? Zoom in?
Yeah.
Then I can do that.
Are we saying the 11th?
No, could we do the 12th?
Yeah,
So
we could do the
before the
12th.
select
It would just
board, we
like,
do have
if we're
select board,
only,
right?
yes,
So just do
do
it
a select
prior.
board.
yeah,
I mean, I would imagine it would
What
be,
time? 5 o'clock?
should be quick.
5:30,
5:30?
5 o'clock actually, well, whatever it makes.
5 o'clock or
Do we
5:30?
think we want to meet at 5 or at 5:30? What do you think, Louise?
I don't.
I think we're pretty close, so.
Yeah, I think this will be very short. It's just so we have a chance to see the final words.
Here's what I'm gonna say. Let's plan for 5:30. If somebody sees the words and is significantly concerned about something, you should flag it to Kate and we'll shift to 5.
Okay.
Does that sound like it works? Cause
Sure.
I'm thinking we can just gather and gavel in and gavel out, I think. Hopefully we'll be at.
I was about to add it to my calendar, and then somebody had asked me if I wanted to send it to all members of the committee.
No, don't,
So
No.
I opted not to.
thank you,
Thank you.
always becomes a.
We could put that in here too.
Yes, that part of the work
All.
plan. All right, so now we have more clarity on what the work plan is. The scope and the time limits.
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, Adam. Now that we've done a little bit more drafting, I'm wondering if we want to flip flop sections 116.3 and 116.4. Because 116.4 says what this committee is doing, and it seems like
Yeah.
maybe a
Yeah,
low spot in the numbering for
Yes.
for
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
I will make that switch.
what we're doing than how we're doing it.
I almost think
Makes
they
sense.
could have moved that up.
Do you have a sense where it would fall in the annual town meeting?
The end. That was good, right? Yeah. The general bylaws are at the end.
Before the omnibus.
And the citizens petition.
Yeah.
All right, so Chris will get me his draft. I'll get it out to everyone tomorrow. And then it'll be in the draft warrant as a draft. And then we'll make any final amendments, but like Marian said, if you see something that really is a typo or needs to be fixed, just let me know.
I don't know, yeah. Okay. All right, great. Thank you, everybody. I appreciate all the work. Louise, do you have another question, comment?
Nope, perfect. Everything seems good.
Hopefully you'll be able to show up in the picture on Dave's Zoom.
I know. I'm gonna check out my computer. I'm gonna check out my Zoom to see why I don't have a camera.
No, it's the same thing happened at my last meeting, so.
Okay.
It's something with the OTM. 'Cause this
Okay,
one is- Okay,
All right, so I need a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second,
All right, and individual votes. Louise?
yes.
All right, wait, I have to remember who are the committee members? You're
no,
No.
a staff
we're not.
Aye.
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 and the chair votes aye. Oh, Kate, you're a
Nope,
member too.
nope,
No, anybody? Okay, just checking.
Just on branding.
All right, thanks. We are adjourned.
So,
Wait.
Sorry. And, oh, you need one? Thank you. And